Hey guys, it's JP at Justus Prep. This is day 2 of our ACT math practice. This is a series of videos that I'm making in order to help you to prepare for the ACT math section, what I believe to be the hardest part of that test. Now, if you missed the last video, then definitely check that one out. Today we're going to do another 3 problems. You're going to want that PDF, so click the link in the description. Download that PDF, print it out, do the questions for today, and then watch the rest of this video. All right, let's get started. All right, question number 1. Which of the following is divisible by 3 with no remainder? So if something is divisible by 3 with no remainder, that means that if you divide that number by 3, it'll become an integer. The result is an integer. It's not a decimal. And what we could do simply is take each of these 5 numbers and divide each of them by 3 and see which one gives us an integer. And we could do that with our calculators. Or if you know the rule for the divisibility rule for 3, then you can use that as well. So the divisibility rule for 3 is a number is divisible by 3 if the sum of each of the digits is also divisible by 3. So if the sum is divisible by 3, then that number itself is divisible by 3. So let's take a look at the first answer choice A. The digits are 2, 0, 2, and 0. So if we add these numbers up, we get 4. 4 is not divisible by 3, so this number is not divisible by 3. That is not the answer. And we can do the same thing for the rest of these answer choices. So we have 1 plus 4 plus 5 plus 2. That is 12. 12 is divisible by 3. So this ends up being our answer. And now we could do the same thing and check all of these, and we'll see that they are not divisible by 3. So the answer here is B. Question number 2. The concentration of a substance in a solution is 2 times 10 to the negative 5th milligrams per milliliter. How many milligrams are in 3 times 10 to the 8th milliliters? What we can do here is set up a proportion. So we have milligrams to milliliters. We have 2 times 10 to the negative 5th milligrams, and that is per 1 milliliter. That is per 1 milliliter. And so what we can do is we can set up a proportion. It's asking for how many milligrams. So how many milligrams? Milligrams will be the thing that we're trying to figure out. So we'll put that there. And we put the milligrams in the numerator on the other side because milligrams are in the numerator on the left-hand ratio. And we'll just call this X. We'll leave that as a variable. How many milligrams are in 3 times 10 to the 8th milliliters? So 3 times 10 to the 8th milliliters. At this point, what we can do is we can cross multiply. So we can cross multiply. That'll be 2 times 10 to the negative 5th times 3 times 10 to the 8th equals 1 times X. So let's write that down. Now, before we just mindlessly plug these numbers into a calculator to see what the answer is going to be, we can just take a minute to guesstimate. First, we notice that each of these numbers is connected by multiplication. So there's multiplication here, here, and here. So what we can do is change the order of things. I can take 2 and I can multiply it by 3. And that'll give me 6. And then I have times 10 to the negative 5th times 10 to the 8th. So times 10 to the negative 5th and times 10 to the 8th. Then I can apply one of those exponent rules that we discussed in day 1. Here we're just going to add the exponents. So that'll be 10 to the negative 5 plus 8, which is 10 to the 3rd. So this is really 6 times 10 to the 3rd. If we look at the answer choices, that's answer choice E. Before we solve this, we could have looked at the answer choices. Once we got here at the 6, we could have looked at the answer choices to see, oh, that's not a 6, That's not a 6. That's not a 6. The only 6's are right here. Then we would look at the difference, what the difference is between these two. This is 10 to the negative 13th and 10 to the 3rd. And so we would concentrate on these exponents, negative 5 and 8. When we're multiplying these two together, are we going to get a negative 13? So is it going to be negative 5 minus 8 to give us that negative 13? Or is it negative 5 plus 8 to give us that 10 to the 3rd? Hopefully you'll see that because you have a positive exponent that's bigger than the negative one, that what you have to end up with is something positive, which then you wouldn't even need to calculate this. You could just know that this one has to be the answer because it can't be negative. Okay, number 3, if one leg of a right triangle is 6 centimeters long and the other leg is 8 centimeters long, how long is the triangle's hypotenuse? So we have a right triangle, it's 6 centimeters long and the other leg is 8 centimeters long. So we have the lengths of the two legs. So if I say that this is 6 and this is 8, so the triangle would look roughly like that. This is 6, this is 8. And the hypotenuse has to be the longest side of a right triangle. So we know that it has to be greater than 8. Now, before we try to solve this, we can also look at the answer choices. And we see that some of these have these square roots. And what you could do is just plug these numbers into your calculator and figure out their value. So 2 root 7 is 5.3. 5 root 2 is 7.1. And 6 root 2 is 8.5. So we see that B and D cannot be the answer because we need some number here that's bigger than 8. If we also look at C, 15, this is too big because this hypotenuse is bigger than 8, but it's not almost twice as big as 8. So that's not going to be the answer. It's either going to be 8.5, 6 root 2, or it's going to be 10. What we can do here is we can use a formula. We can use Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And the a and b are the two sides other than the hypotenuse, and c is the hypotenuse. So here this would be 6 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. This is 36 plus 64, c squared. That is 100. So what we would do is square both sides, square root both sides, and we would get c equals 10. So the answer is A. Now, what I would recommend that you do is memorize what are called Pythagorean triples. So there are a couple of triples here, 3, 4, 5, probably being the most popular. But if you just multiply each of these by 2, you get 6, 8, 10. So these triples you should just know. You should have these memorized. So if two sides are 3 and 4, you know that the hypotenuse is 5. Or if it's 6 and 8, you know that the hypotenuse is 10. The other one that comes out commonly is 5, 12, 13. So I would say these three triples you should definitely have memorized. So if you have two sides that are 5 and 12, you know that the hypotenuse has to be 13. All right, that is it. Thank you for watching. I hope that you found this helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And I hope to see you in the next one.